Karen Davis stood at her kitchen window, watching the October rain streak down the glass like tears she refused to shed. At 68, she had perfected the art of swallowing disappointment, but today felt different. The envelope in her trembling hands contained 4 boarding passes to Hawaii passes that bore every family name except hers. "Mom, you'd hate the long flight," Michael had said last Sunday over dinner, not meeting her eyes. "And the resort doesn't have elevators. All those stairs would be rough on your knees." Jessica had nodded in agreement, her voice artificially bright. "Plus, the kids need this bonding time with just us. You understand, right?" Karen had nodded then, as she always did, understanding, accommodating, invisible. But now, holding the tickets that Jessica had accidentally mailed to her address instead of theirs, Karen felt something crack open inside her chest. Not her heart that had been breaking slowly for years. Something fiercer. Something that had been dormant since Robert died 3 years ago. She walked to her husband's den, unchanged since his passing, and opened the desk drawer where she kept important papers. Her passport lay there, still valid for 2 more years. Robert had insisted they renew them together before his diagnosis, dreaming of trips they'd never take. "Live a little, Karen," he'd whispered during his final weeks. "Promise me you won't just exist." She'd promised, but promises to the dying felt impossible to keep when you were left behind with an empty house and a family who saw you as a burden to manage rather than a person to include. Karen picked up her phone and dialed the airline. "I'd like to cancel these reservations, Pho," she said, reading off the confirmation number. "May I ask the reason for cancellation? Ma'am, change of plans." After hanging up, she sat in Robert's leather chair and stared at her reflection in the dark computer screen. The woman looking back had graying hair pulled into a sensible bun, reading glasses hanging from a chain, and clothes chosen for comfort over style. When had she become so forgettable? The rain stopped. Afternoon sunlight broke through the clouds, casting everything in gold. Karen stood up, smoothed her cardigan, and made a decision that would change everything. She was going to Hawaii. The next morning, Karen drove to the travel agency downtown she'd never been comfortable booking online. The young woman behind the counter smiled with practiced patience as Karen explained what she wanted. "A single traveler to Maui. How wonderful. When would you like to depart?" "Tomorrow," Karen said. The agent's fingers paused over her keyboard. "Tomorrow, ma'am. That's very short notice. The flights will be expensive. And accommodation. Money isn't the issue." Karen pulled out her credit card. "I need to leave tomorrow." Then as the agent worked, Karen thought about the phone calls she'd need to make, or rather, the one call she wouldn't make. Michael would discover the canceled reservations when he arrived at the airport. Let him wonder. Let him worry. For once, he could experience the feeling of being left out. "I found you a lovely resort in Wailea," the agent said. "Ocean view, spa services, very peaceful, perfect for a solo traveler." Karen signed the papers and walked out with her boarding pass, feeling simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. At the bank, she withdrew $2,000 in cash, more money than she'd carried since Robert's funeral. Then she drove to the mall, something she hadn't done in months. In Nordstrom, she stood before a rack of vacation clothes, overwhelmed by choices. A saleswoman approached, probably half Karen's age, with kind eyes and a genuine smile. "Planning something special, a trip to Hawaii," Karen said. I don't usually First vacation in a while? First vacation alone? Ever?" The saleswoman's expression softened. "Let's find you something that makes you feel amazing." 2 hours later, Karen emerged with 3 sundresses, a swimsuit she wasn't sure she'd ever wear, sandals that actually flattered her feet, and a wide-brimmed hat that made her feel mysterious. The total came to more than she'd spent on herself in the past 2 years, but when she looked in the fitting room mirror, she saw someone who might be worth including in vacation plans. That evening, Karen packed carefully, folding her new clothes with the reverence of ritual. She left a note for her neighbor, Tom Bradley. "Gone for a week? Water the plants, please. Emergency contact info on fridge." She didn't mention where she was going. Before bed, she turned off her phone and placed it in the drawer. Whatever storm was coming, she wanted one peaceful night before it hit. Karen woke before dawn, feeling lighter than she had in years. The house seemed to approve of her rebellion, greeting her with morning light that felt like encouragement. She dressed in one of her new outfits, a navy blue dress with tiny white flowers that made her think of summer days from her childhood. Her flight didn't leave until afternoon, but she needed to stop at the bank to transfer funds from savings to checking. Robert had always handled their finances, leaving her with a basic understanding of their accounts, but not the details. She'd been living carefully off his pension and Social Security, never touching the principal in their savings. At the bank, Karen sat across from Mrs. Patterson, the account manager who'd helped her after Robert's death. "I need to access some of our savings for a trip," Karen explained. Mrs. Patterson pulled up the account, then frowned at her screen. "Mrs. Davis, I'm showing a second savings account under your name, one that was opened 2 years ago." Karen's stomach dropped. "I don't have a second account. Let me check." "It shows here that your husband opened it. There's a letter attached to the account, flagged for your attention after any activity." With shaking hands, Karen accepted the envelope. Inside, Robert's familiar handwriting. "My dearest Karen, if you're reading this, you finally decided to do something just for yourself. I've been saving a little each month since my diagnosis. Skimming from our household accounts, don't be mad. I wanted you to have money that was purely yours, no strings attached. $45,000 for my brave girl who spent 40 years putting everyone else first. Go see the world, fall in love with life again. Make me proud. All my love, Robert P.S. The travel insurance policy is in the safe deposit box. Use it." Karen read the letter 3 times before the words truly sank in. $45,000. He'd known. Somehow, Robert had known she would need this push, this gift, this permission to live again. "Mrs. Davis, are you all right?" Mrs. Patterson's voice seemed to come from far away. "I'm perfect," Karen whispered, and for the first time in years, she meant it. She transferred $5,000 to checking and tucked the letter into her purse. On the way to the airport, she stopped at Dr. Patricia Wells's office for a quick consultation. Dr. Sarton Wells had been her physician for 15 years and knew her medical history. "Hawaii, Karen. That's wonderful," Dr. Wells smiled broadly. "Any concerns about the flight, the altitude change?" "I've never flown alone," Karen admitted. "Is it safe at my age? You're 68, not 98. Your blood pressure is controlled, your heart is strong, and you've been cleared for travel. Just stay hydrated and walk around during the flight." Dr. Wells handed her a small travel kit. Compression socks, motion sickness tablets, and my card. Call if you need anything. But honestly, I think this trip is exactly what you need. What? At Portland International Airport, Karen moved through security with the careful attention of someone doing everything for the first time alone. The TSA agent, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, looked at Karen's ID and boarding pass. "Maui lucky you?" "Very lucky," Karen agreed, and realized she meant it. Waiting at the gate, she turned on her phone to check for messages. 3 missed calls from Jessica, 2 from Michael. She turned it off again. They would figure out their canceled reservations soon enough. The flight attendant who helped her find her seat was probably Emma's age, with the kind of confident warmth that reminded Karen of her younger self. back when she'd been a nurse and people had depended on her competence rather than dismissed her as fragile. "First time in Hawaii?" the attendant asked. "First time anywhere?" "Really? Not as part of a family trip. Anyway." "Well, you picked a perfect time. The weather's beautiful, and October is when the locals get their island back from the summer crowds." As the plane lifted off, Karen pressed her face to the window and watched Portland shrink below her. Somewhere down there, Michael and Jessica were probably packing for a trip they no longer had. Somewhere down there was the life she'd been living in smaller and smaller circles since Robert died. But up here, 30,000 feet above the problems that had seemed so overwhelming yesterday, Karen felt something she hadn't experienced in years' possibility. Karen's connection in San Francisco gave her 4 hours to navigate the massive airport and contemplate what she'd done. The magnitude of her rebellion was starting to sink in, along with a growing nervousness about arriving in Hawaii completely alone. She found a quiet corner near her gate and finally turned on her phone. 17 missed calls, 23 text messages. The most recent from Jessica: "Karen, where are you? We're at the airport and our reservations are canceled. This isn't funny." Then Michael: "Mom, please call immediately. We're worried sick." And finally, Emma: "Grandma, whatever you're doing, I think it's awesome. Don't let them guilt you." Karen smiled at her granddaughter's message and turned the phone off again. She wasn't ready for explanations or confrontations. Not yet. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Karen looked up to see an Asian woman about her age, pulling a small rolling suitcase and wearing a travel outfit that suggested someone comfortable with airports. She had silver hair cut in a stylish bob and wore minimal but elegant jewelry. "Please sit," Karen said, moving her purse. The woman settled beside her with a small sigh. "I hate layovers. I'm Maggie Chan, by the way." "Karen Davis. Where are you headed?" "Maui. You?" "The same." Karen studied her new companion. "Are you traveling alone?" Maggie laughed, a sound both bitter and free. "Very alone. Just finalized my divorce last month after 40 years of marriage. Turns out my husband had been planning his retirement with his secretary for the past 5 years. So now I'm planning my own retirement with my own money and my own dreams. I'm sorry about your divorce." "Don't be. Best thing that ever happened to me. I just didn't know it at the time." Maggie looked at Karen appraisingly. "What about you solo adventure?" Karen hesitated, then found herself telling the truth. "My family went to Hawaii without me. Said I was too old for the trip. So I canceled their reservations and booked my own." Maggie's eyes widened. Then she threw back her head and laughed a genuine, delighted sound that drew stares from other passengers. "You didn't—" "I did." "Oh, honey, I like you already. Where are you staying?" "The Grand Wailea." "No kidding, that's where I'm headed." "What are the odds?" Maggie grinned mischievously. "Want to be travel partners? I promise I'm more fun than whatever family you left behind." Karen looked at this stranger who seemed so comfortable in her own skin, so unafraid of taking up space in the world. "I'd like that very much." They spent the rest of the layover sharing stories. Maggie had been a high school English teacher, had raised 3 children who lived scattered across the country, and was working through a bucket list she'd started the day her divorce was final. Hawaii was item number 3, after learn to tango and get a tattoo. "What's number 4?" Karen asked. "Learn to scuba dive. What about you? Do you have a bucket list?" Karen considered this. "I think I'm just starting to write it." The Grand Wailea Resort exceeded Karen's expectations in every way, except one: it was exactly where Michael and Jessica had planned to bring the family. As she and Maggie checked in, Karen wondered if her son was at this very moment standing in some airport customer service line, trying to understand what had happened to their reservation. Their rooms were on the same floor, adjacent but separate. Maggie had insisted they each needed their own space. "Independence is like a muscle," she'd said. "You have to exercise it, or it atrophies." Karen unpacked slowly, hanging her new dresses in the closet and arranging her toiletries in the marble bathroom. The ocean view balcony drew her outside, where the sound of waves and the scent of plumeria made her feel like she'd stepped into someone else's life, someone braver. That evening, they met for dinner at the resort's casual restaurant. Karen wore one of her new sundresses and had even attempted some makeup, something she'd neglected since Robert's funeral. Maggie had changed into flowing pants and a silk blouse that looked effortlessly elegant. "To new adventures," Maggie said, raising her Mai Tai. "To new adventures," Karen echoed, touching her glass to Maggie's. They were halfway through their meal when Karen's phone rang. She'd made the mistake of turning it on to take photos of the sunset. Michael's name appeared on the screen. "You should answer it," Maggie said gently. "They're probably worried." Karen accepted the call, her heart pounding. "Mom, thank God, where are you? We've been going crazy." Michael's voice was tight with stress, and something else, anger, maybe. In the background, she could hear Jessica speaking rapidly and the kids asking questions. "I'm in Hawaii," Karen said simply. "You're where?" "I'm in Hawaii, having dinner. The sunset is beautiful." A long pause. Then Jessica's voice, shrill enough to carry through the phone. "She's in Hawaii. She actually went to Hawaii." "Mom, this isn't funny," Michael said, his voice taking on the patronizing tone she'd grown to hate. "You can't just disappear and—" "I didn't disappear," Karen interrupted, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "I went on vacation, like you did, or tried to. We came to the airport and our reservations were canceled. Do you have any idea how much trouble, less trouble than I've been feeling for the past 3 years, watching my family make plans around me instead of with me?" Another pause. When Michael spoke again, his voice was quieter but no less upset. "Mom, you canceled our family vacation. Do you understand how selfish that is?" The word hit Karen like a slap. Selfish. After 40 years of marriage, spent accommodating Robert's career moves, his family obligations, his needs. After raising Michael while working as a nurse, supporting them through his college years, babysitting the grandchildren whenever asked. After 3 years of quiet grief, of family dinners where she felt like a tolerated guest rather than the matriarch. "Yes," she said finally. "I suppose it is selfish. How does it feel?" "Karen," Maggie whispered, grinning and giving her a thumbs up. "Mom, we need to talk about this. We're talking now. I mean in person. When you come home, tomorrow. I'm not coming home tomorrow. I'm staying for a week, maybe longer. Mom, be reasonable. You're not equipped for this. What if something happens? What if you get sick? Or lost? Or—" "Then I'll handle it. Like I handled everything when your father was dying. Like I handle everything now." Jessica's voice came through the phone. "Tell her this is ridiculous. She's acting like a child." Karen looked at Maggie, who was watching with the intense focus of someone witnessing a moment of truth. The restaurant bustled around them, families laughing over dinner, couples holding hands, the ordinary magic of people living their lives instead of apologizing for them. "I have to go," Karen said. "My dinner is getting cold." "Mom, don't you dare hang up." She hung up. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from the incredible rush of saying exactly what she meant for the first time in years. "How do you feel?" Maggie asked. "Terrified," Karen admitted. "And alive." Maggie reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Welcome to the rest of your life. They finished dinner in comfortable conversation, making plans for the next day. Snorkeling, Maggie suggested. The fish don't judge you for your age. Karen laughed, realizing she couldn't remember the last time she'd made plans that weren't dependent on someone else's schedule or approval. That night, lying in her resort bed with the sound of waves outside her window, Karen stared at the ceiling and tried to process what she'd done. Somewhere on the mainland, Michael and Jessica were probably booking new flights, rearranging their plans, dealing with disappointed children. She felt a pang of guilt about Emma and Ryan, but not about their parents. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Dad is freaking out, but I told him you're a grown woman and can go where you want. Proud of you. Grandma. Send pics." Karen smiled and turned off the phone. Tomorrow, she was going to learn to snorkel. At 68, she was finally going to put her head underwater and see what was beneath the surface. The snorkeling lesson was not what Karen had imagined. Standing waist-deep in the crystal-clear water of Wailea Beach, wearing a mask and fins that made her feel like an ungainly water bird, she fought the instinctive panic that came with putting her face underwater. Just breathe normally through the snorkel. The instructor, a patient young man named Jake, encouraged. The ocean will hold you up. Maggie, floating nearby like a natural mermaid despite being a year older than Karen, offered encouragement. I'm terrified of heights, but not water. You've got this. Think of it as flying underwater. When Karen finally surrendered to the water and opened her eyes beneath the surface, she gasped through her snorkel. Schools of yellow tangs moved like living sunbeams through the coral, and a sea turtle glided past with ancient grace. She floated there, 68 years old, and seeing her first underwater world, tears of wonder mixing with salt water inside her mask. I can't believe I waited this long, she told Maggie afterward as they dried off on the beach. I can't believe your family thought you couldn't handle this. That afternoon, they signed up for a cooking class at a local cultural center. Karen had always been a competent cook. She'd fed her family for decades. But this was different. This was cooking for joy, not obligation. She learned to prepare poke with fresh ahi tuna, to make poi from scratch, to season Kahlua pig with the reverence it deserved. You have good hands, the instructor, a Hawaiian woman named Leilani, told her, natural feel for the ingredients. Karen looked down at her hands that had changed diapers and bandaged wounds, held her husband during his final breaths, folded endless loads of laundry. She'd never thought of them as talented, just functional. That evening, back in her room, Karen made the mistake of checking Facebook. Her heart stopped when she saw Michael's post. Please keep our family in your prayers. My mother is going through a difficult time and has made some concerning decisions. We're asking for privacy while we work through this family crisis. The post had dozens of comments, friends expressing concern, offering prayers, asking if Karen was all right. Several mentioned her name specifically, as if she were incapacitated or missing rather than sitting in a Hawaiian resort room, wearing a new dress and feeling more capable than she had in years. Karen stared at the screen, understanding dawning. Michael wasn't worried about her safety. He was embarrassed. His mother had behaved inappropriately, had broken the unspoken rules of how widowed grandmothers were supposed to act. The post was damage control, a way to frame her independence as a mental health crisis rather than a rational choice. She screenshot the post and knocked on Maggie's door. Look at this. Maggie read the post, her expression darkening. Oh, hell no. This is emotional manipulation at its finest. He's making me sound like I'm having a breakdown. Are you having a breakdown? Karen considered the question seriously. No, I think I'm having a breakthrough. Then you need to control the narrative before he does. Maggie handed back the phone. Tell your own story. They spent the next hour crafting a Facebook post with a photo Maggie had taken of Karen snorkeling, her face visible through the clear water, surrounded by tropical fish. Reports of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. I'm having a wonderful time in Maui, learning new things and making new friends. At 68, I'm discovering that life doesn't end when your family thinks you're too old for adventures. It just begins on your own terms. Mahalo from paradise. The response was immediate and overwhelmingly positive. Friends from her nursing days, neighbors, people from her church, all expressing support and admiration. Several women her age commented about their own delayed adventures, their own moments of choosing themselves first. But among the supportive comments, one stood out from her daughter-in-law, Jessica. "This is not appropriate behavior for someone your age. We're very concerned about your judgment." Karen stared at the comment, feeling the familiar urge to apologize, to smooth things over, to make herself smaller. Instead, she deleted it. "Good," Maggie said, watching over her shoulder. "Don't let anyone shame you for taking up space in your own life." That night, Karen called Emma directly. "Grandma, oh my God, your post is going viral in our town. Mrs. Henderson from down the street shared it and said she wishes she had your courage. How are your parents handling this?" Emma's voice dropped. "Not great. Dad keeps saying you're not thinking clearly, and Mom is researching." "Well, she's researching things about elderly people and mental competency." Karen's blood chilled. "What kind of things? I probably shouldn't say." "Emma, what kind of things? Stuff about guardianship and psychiatric holds. But Grandma, I don't think they can actually do anything. You're obviously fine. You're just finally having fun." After hanging up, Karen sat on her balcony and watched the stars reflect on the ocean. The trade winds carried the scent of jasmine and the distant sound of Hawaiian music from another part of the resort. Everything around her spoke of peace and beauty, but inside, a cold fear was growing. Michael and Jessica weren't just embarrassed by her independence, they were threatened by it, and they were researching ways to take it away. "They can't force a psychiatric evaluation on you without cause," Maggie said over breakfast the next morning. "And being happy in Hawaii isn't grounds for mental incompetency." "But they could try to make a case," Karen said, pushing her papaya around her plate. "I did cancel their vacation. I am acting differently than I have for years." "You're acting like someone who remembers she has choices. That's not mental illness, that's mental health." They were interrupted by Karen's phone ringing. "Dr. Wells' office." "Mrs. Davis. This is Jennifer from Dr. Wells' office. We've had some concerning calls about your welfare. Your son is requesting copies of your medical records and asking about your mental state. We can't release anything without your permission, but Dr. Wells wanted you to know." Karen thanked Jennifer and hung up, her appetite completely gone. "They're building a case," she told Maggie. "Then we build a better one." They spent the morning at the Maui Ocean Center, where Karen found herself mesmerized by the aquarium's main tank, a massive underwater world that reminded her of her snorkeling experience. She pulled out her phone and began taking photos, not for Facebook or family, but because the beauty demanded to be captured. "You have a good eye," Maggie observed, watching Karen frame a shot of a manta ray gliding through blue water. "I always wanted to be a photographer," Karen admitted. "Before nursing school, before marriage, before everything else took priority. What's stopping you now? I'm 68. You can't start a new career at 68. Maggie gave her a look. "Says who?" That afternoon, they visited a camera store in Paia, where a young employee named David, not her son, thankfully showed Karen the basics of digital photography. She left with a real camera, not just her phone, and a memory card full of tutorial videos. "This feels like the most expensive mistake I've ever made," Karen said as they walked back to their car. "Or the best investment." That evening, Karen sat on her balcony editing photos on her new camera. The learning curve was steep, but she found herself absorbed in a way she hadn't experienced since, when she couldn't remember the last time she'd lost track of time doing something purely for herself. Her phone rang. Emma again. "Grandma, I need to tell you something. Mom and Dad are talking to lawyers." Karen's heart sank. "About what?" "About guardianship. They think you're having some kind of breakdown, and they need to protect you from yourself. They're saying you've been acting irrationally ever since Grandpa died, and this trip is proof that you can't make good decisions anymore. Emma, do you think I'm having a breakdown? Are you kidding? You're the sanest person in this family right now, but Grandma, they're really scared. Not of you being hurt, but of you being different, independent. They've gotten used to you being someone they take care of, instead of someone who takes care of herself." After the call, Karen walked down to the beach and stood at the water's edge, letting the waves wash over her feet. The moon was full, painting a silver path across the ocean that seemed to lead toward infinite possibility. She thought about the woman she'd been before Robert got sick, confident, capable, the one people turned to in a crisis. Somewhere in the years of caregiving and grief, she'd forgotten that person existed. But she was still there, underneath the layers of accommodation and diminished expectations. A sea turtle surfaced about 20 feet offshore, its ancient head breaking the moonlit water before disappearing again. Karen raised her camera and captured the moment, not the turtle itself, but the ripples it left behind. The evidence of something wild and free moving through the darkness. She was not going home to be someone else's definition of an appropriate grandmother. She was going to figure out who Karen Davis really was, and she was going to do it on her own terms. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor to the resort lobby. Karen was checking the activity schedule when the concierge approached her. "Mrs. Davis, there's a gentleman here asking for you. Says he's a family friend." Karen's stomach dropped as she saw Tom Bradley, her neighbor, looking uncomfortable in khakis and a Hawaiian shirt that still had crease marks from the package. "Tom, what are you doing here?" "Karen, thank God you're okay." Tom's relief seemed genuine. "Michael asked me to fly out here. He's worried sick about you." "Michael sent you to Hawaii to check on me. He thought you might listen to me. He's convinced something's wrong, that you're not thinking clearly. Canceling their vacation. Disappearing like this." Tom gestured helplessly. "It's not like you." "Karen, maybe that's the problem. Maybe I've been too much like me for too long." Maggie appeared at Karen's elbow, studying Tom with the assessing gaze of a longtime teacher. "And you are Tom Bradley. I live next door to Karen in Portland." "The one she left the note for," Maggie said, not extending her hand. "The one who apparently can't water plants without involving lawyers." Tom looked confused. "Lawyers?" Karen sank into a lobby chair, suddenly exhausted. "Tom, did Michael tell you why he sent you here? To bring you home? To make sure you're safe? Did he mention that he's been calling doctors and lawyers, that he's trying to have me declared mentally incompetent?" Tom's face paled. That's not... He said you were having some kind of breakdown." "Do I look like I'm having a breakdown?" Tom studied her, really looked at her for the first time since he'd arrived. Karen in her new sundress, her tan from days in the sun, her hair loose instead of pinned back, her eyes bright with life instead of dulled by routine. "No," he admitted. You look better than you have in years." "That's because I am better than I've been in years." They talked for 2 hours. Karen showed Tom her photos, introduced him to Maggie, explained about Robert's letter and the money he'd left for exactly this purpose. Slowly, Tom's worried expression changed to something like admiration. "He's my son, and I love him," Karen said finally. "But he's wrong about this. And if he tries to force me into some kind of legal guardianship because I finally decided to live instead of just exist, I'll fight him." Tom nodded slowly. "What do you want me to tell him?" "Tell him his mother is fine. Better than fine. And if he wants a relationship with me going forward, it's going to be as an adult talking to another adult, not as a caretaker managing a burden." That evening, after Tom had flown back to Portland with photos and reassurances, Karen received a text from Emma. "Dad's mad that Mr. Bradley wouldn't convince you to come home. Now he's really talking about legal stuff. Be careful, Grandma." Karen showed the message to Maggie. "Time to go on the offensive," Maggie said. "You need documentation that you're of sound mind and making rational decisions. How do we do that? We start with this." Maggie pulled out her tablet and opened a video recording app. "Record yourself. Explain who you are, where you are, why you're here. Make it clear that you're not running away from reality, you're running toward it. Make copies. Send them to multiple people. Create a paper trail that shows you're thinking clearly and making informed decisions." Karen looked at herself in the tablet's camera, her sun-kissed face, her confident posture, her eyes that sparkled with something that had been missing for years. "My name is Karen Davis," she began. "I'm 68 years old, and I'm in Maui, Hawaii, on vacation. I came here because my family planned a trip and decided I was too old to include. Instead of accepting that judgment, I decided to prove them wrong." The video went on for 15 minutes. Karen talked about Robert's letter, about rediscovering her love of photography, about learning to snorkel and feeling young again. She spoke directly to the camera, her voice clear and strong, every word evidence of a mind that was not just sound, but thriving. "If someone is watching this video as evidence in any kind of legal proceeding," she concluded, "I want to be very clear. I am here by choice. I am safe. I am happy. And I am exactly where I belong. And if my family can't accept that, then they're the ones who need help, not me." She saved multiple copies and emailed them to Dr. Wells, to Tom, to her priest, Father McKenna, and to her old supervisor from the hospital. Then she posted a shorter version on Facebook. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments from friends and acquaintances supporting her decision. 3 former nursing colleagues commented that they were inspired to plan their own solo adventures. Mrs. R. Henderson from down the street wrote, "You go, here, girl, show these kids that 68 is the new 40. But there were no comments from Michael or Jessica, only a cold silence that felt more ominous than any angry phone call. That night, Karen couldn't sleep. She sat on her balcony with her camera, experimenting with night photography, capturing the way moonlight turned the ocean into liquid silver. She was learning that photography wasn't just about recording what you saw, it was about showing others what they might have missed, like the beauty in a 68-year-old woman rediscovering her courage, like the strength it took to stop apologizing for taking up space in the world, like the grace of finally putting yourself first. Karen and Maggie's week in Hawaii passed like a beautiful dream. But reality was waiting in the form of a certified letter at the resort's front desk. Karen's hands shook as she read the legal document, a petition for emergency guardianship filed by Michael Davis, citing diminished capacity and unsafe decision-making. "They can't do this while you're in Hawaii," Maggie said, reading over her shoulder. "But they can start the process for when you return." "I don't want to go back," Karen whispered. "Then don't. Not yet." That afternoon, they canceled their return flights and booked a road trip up the California coast. If Michael wanted to question her mental capacity, she'd give him more evidence of her independence. They rented a small RV, Maggie's idea, and surprisingly practical for 2 women their age who wanted to travel safely but spontaneously. "I've always wanted to see Big Sur," Maggie said as they pulled out of the San Francisco rental lot, Karen nervously gripping the steering wheel. Never had anyone to go with. I've never driven anything this big, Karen admitted. You'll figure it out. We both will. The drive down Highway 1 was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Karen had to stop twice to calm her nerves, but each time she got back behind the wheel, she felt a little more capable, a little more confident that she could handle whatever came next. Big Sur overwhelmed her with its raw beauty, towering redwoods and dramatic cliffs that made her feel both insignificant and infinite. At the Nepenthe restaurant, perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, they met a group of women in their 70s who called themselves the Silver Nomads Retirees, who traveled together in a caravan of RVs, following good weather and their own curiosity. "Started 5 years ago when my husband died," explained their leader, a woman named Dorothy with silver braids and laugh lines earned through decades of joy. "Turns out I liked traveling a lot more when I could choose where to go." "How do your families handle it?" Karen asked. "They had to learn," said another woman, Marie. "My son used to call every day, convinced I'd drive off a cliff or get murdered in a Walmart parking lot. Now he calls once a week to hear about my adventures." That evening, parked in a campground overlooking the ocean, Karen received a call from Tom Bradley. "Karen, I need to warn you. Michael hired a private investigator." Her blood went cold. "To do what?" "To track your movements, document your behavior. He's building a case that you're endangering yourself by traveling alone. The investigator's been asking your neighbors questions, trying to find evidence of confusion or poor judgment." "What kind of evidence? Did you forget to pay bills? Leave appliances on show signs of memory loss? Karen, he's really going through with this guardianship thing." After hanging up, Karen sat outside the RV in a folding chair, watching stars emerge over the Pacific. The Silver Nomads had set up camp nearby, and she could hear their laughter mixing with the sound of waves. "They can't take your freedom away for being happy," Maggie said, joining her with 2 cups of tea. "They can try." Then we fight back. The next morning brought another shock. Emma called, crying. "Grandma, I overheard Mom and Dad talking to the lawyer. They're saying you might be developing dementia, that your behavior has been erratic since Grandpa died. They're using the fact that you gave away some of Grandpa's clothes as evidence that you can't make good decisions about important things." Karen remembered that day 6 months ago, finally cleaning out Robert's closet, because seeing his shirts every morning was keeping her trapped in grief. She donated everything to the church clothing drive, keeping only one sweater that still smelled like his cologne. "Emma, do you think I have dementia?" "Of course not. You're texting me photos that are better than anything on Instagram. You learned to snorkel. You're driving an RV up the coast. You're more alive than you've been since Grandpa died. But they're scared of you being different. Different how? Happy. Independent. Not needing them to take care of you." That afternoon, Karen made a decision that would have been unthinkable a month ago. She called a lawyer, a woman named Sarah Martinez, who specialized in elder law and had excellent reviews online. "Mrs. Davis, I'm familiar with your case. Your son's attorney contacted me as well, thinking I might represent him. I declined." "Why?" "Because what you're doing isn't evidence of diminished capacity. It's evidence of someone finally exercising their full capacity. I'd be honored to represent you." They met the next day at Sarah's office in Monterey. Sarah was younger than Emma, but spoke with the authority of someone who'd fought these battles before. "Guardianship abuse is more common than people realize," Sarah explained. "Adult children who mistake control for care, who can't accept that their parents have the right to make choices they disagree with. The good news is that you've created excellent documentation of your mental clarity. The bad news is that your son has resources and seems determined. What do I need to do?" Keep doing exactly what you're doing. Live your life, document your experiences, stay in contact with friends and medical professionals who can attest to your competency. And Karen, don't let them bully you into coming home before you're ready. That evening, Karen sat in the RV editing photos on her laptop, a skill she'd taught herself through YouTube videos. The image on the screen showed her standing at the edge of a Big Sur cliff, arms outstretched toward the ocean, her face tilted toward the sky. She looked like a woman celebrating freedom, not fleeing from reality. She posted the photo with a caption, "Day 12 of my solo adventure." Learning that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's feeling the fear and choosing growth anyway. Some people think this journey proves I've lost my mind. I think it proves I've found my soul. The response was immediate and overwhelmingly supportive, but buried in the comments was one that made her stomach drop. "This public display is concerning. Professional help is available. J. Davis." The video conference call was scheduled for 2 p.m. Pacific Time, connecting Karen's lawyer in Monterey with Michael's attorney in Portland and a family court judge who would determine whether emergency guardianship proceedings should move forward. Karen sat in Sarah Martinez's office, wearing a navy blazer she'd bought that morning and feeling like she was on trial for the crime of being happy. "Before we begin," Judge Williams said, her voice coming through the laptop speakers with crisp authority, "I want to be clear about what we're determining today. This is not a full guardianship hearing. This is a preliminary assessment of whether Mrs. Davis poses an immediate danger to herself that would justify emergency intervention." Michael's lawyer, a stern man named Robert Chen, no relation to Maggie, spoke first. "Your Honor, Mrs. Davis has exhibited a pattern of increasingly erratic behavior. She canceled her family's vacation out of spite, disappeared without telling anyone where she was going, and is now gallivanting across the country with a stranger, spending money recklessly and putting herself in dangerous situations." "Mr. Chen," Judge Williams interrupted, "gallivanting is not a legal term, and taking a vacation is not typically considered dangerous behavior." "Your Honor, Mrs. Davis is 68 years old and traveling alone." "I'm also sitting right here," Karen said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "And I can speak for myself." Judge Williams smiled slightly. "Indeed you can, Mrs. Davis. Tell me, in your own words, why you're in California instead of at home in Portland." Karen took a breath and looked directly into the camera. "Your Honor, 3 years ago, my husband died after a long illness. Since then, my family has gradually treated me less like a capable adult and more like a burden to be managed. When they planned a family vacation and decided I was too old to be included, I realized I had a choice: accept their definition of who I am, or rediscover who I actually am." "And what did you discover?" "That I'm stronger than they gave me credit for, that I can learn new things, meet new people, take care of myself in unfamiliar situations, that 68 doesn't mean defeated." Sarah spoke up. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence of Mrs. Davis's mental acuity." She shared the screen showing Karen's Facebook posts, her photography, testimonials from the friends she'd made in Hawaii and California. Dr. Patricia Wells, Mrs. Davis's physician for 15 years, has provided a written statement confirming that Mrs. Davis is in excellent mental health and showed good judgment in consulting her before traveling. Mrs. Davis has also maintained regular contact with friends and neighbors, managed her finances responsibly, and documented her travels extensively. "Mr.?" Chen countered. "Your Honor, Mrs. Davis's recent behavior represents a dramatic departure from her normal patterns. She's traveling with a complete stranger. A friend," Karen corrected. "Margaret Chen, a retired teacher. Would you like her contact information so you can verify that she's not a dangerous criminal?" "Mrs. Davis," Judge Williams said, "your son's attorney suggests that your decision to cancel the family vacation was vindictive. How do you respond?" Karen had prepared for this question, but the answer still came from her heart. "Your Honor, I'm not proud of canceling their reservations. It was impulsive and probably hurtful, but it was also the first time in years I'd made a decision based on what I needed instead of what others expected from me. Was it perfect? No. Was it necessary? Absolutely. Michael's voice came through the speakers, tight with emotion. Mom, please. I'm worried about you. This isn't like you. You're right, Karen said, looking at the camera. It's not like the version of me you've gotten comfortable with. The version that says yes to everything, that asks for nothing, that disappears into the background so you don't have to think about getting older yourselves. But Michael, this is exactly like the me I used to be. The me who raised you, who worked as a trauma nurse, who took care of your father through cancer while never missing one of your soccer games. I'm not becoming someone else. I'm remembering who I've always been. Judge Williams was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke with the measured tone of someone who'd seen too many families tear themselves apart over good intentions gone wrong. Mr. Chen, I've reviewed the evidence your client submitted, and I've listened to the testimony today. Mrs. Davis appears to be mentally competent, physically capable, and making rational decisions about her own life. The fact that these decisions surprise or concern her family does not constitute grounds for emergency guardianship. Your Honor, I'm not finished. Mr. Davis, I understand you're concerned about your mother's welfare. That concern comes from a place of love, and that's commendable. However, your mother is not required to live her life according to your expectations or comfort level. She has the right to travel, to make new friends, to spend her own money, and to take reasonable risks in pursuit of her own happiness. Karen felt tears starting, but they were tears of relief, not sadness. The petition for emergency guardianship is denied. Mrs. Davis, you're free to continue your travels. I do hope you'll consider maintaining regular contact with your family, not because you're required to, but because it might help them adjust to seeing you as the independent adult you clearly are. After the call ended, Karen sat in Sarah's office feeling simultaneously victorious and exhausted. What happens now, Maya? She asked. Now you live your life. Sarah said. They could try to file for regular guardianship, but after today's hearing, no judge would take that seriously. You've proven you're competent, and they've proven they're overprotective. That evening, Karen called Emma from her hotel room overlooking Monterey Bay. Grandma, I heard about the hearing from Mom. She's really upset, but I think it's good upset, if that makes sense. Like maybe she's starting to realize she was wrong. What about your father? He's processing. But Grandma, he printed out some of your photos. The one of you at the cliff in Big Sur is on his desk at work. After hanging up, Karen stepped onto her hotel balcony and watched sea otters playing in the kelp beds below. Tomorrow, she and Maggie would continue north toward Oregon. But tonight, she wanted to savor this moment, the moment she'd stood up for herself in a court of law and won. She pulled out her phone and called Robert's number, knowing it was disconnected but needing to hear his voicemail one more time. Hi, you've reached Robert Davis. I can't come to the phone right now, but if you leave your name and number... Hi, honey, she said after the beep. I did it. I finally did what you asked me to do in that letter. I'm living again. I wish you could see me now. I think you'd be proud. I love you. And I'm okay. I'm really, truly okay. She hung up and deleted his number from her phone. Not because she was forgetting him, but because she was finally ready to stop living in the past and start building a future. 3 weeks after leaving Portland as someone's worried mother and grandmother, Karen returned as herself confident, suntanned, and carrying a portfolio of photographs that told the story of a woman rediscovering her own life. But she didn't go straight home. Instead, she and Maggie drove the RV to a KOA campground 30 minutes outside Portland, where they set up camp like two teenagers planning a rebellion. Karen needed time to prepare for whatever came next, and she needed to do it on neutral ground. Her first stop was Dr. Wells' office, where she wanted to document her excellent health and mental state one more time. Karen, Dr. Wells, barely contained her excitement. "You look absolutely fantastic. How do you feel?" "Like I've been sleeping for 3 years and finally woke up." The examination confirmed what Karen already knew. Her blood pressure was perfect. Her reflexes sharp, her mind clear. Dr. Wells added a note to her file. "Patient has returned from extended travel in excellent physical and mental health. Travel has clearly been beneficial to overall well-being." From there, Karen drove to her old nursing supervisor at OHSU Hospital, where she'd worked for 25 years before retiring to care for Robert. Karen Davis, Helen Morrison, enveloped her in a hug. "I saw your Facebook posts. Good for you. You know, we have a volunteer photography program here. Patients love having their portraits taken for their families. Interested?" For the first time in years, Karen felt useful in a way that had nothing to do with being someone's caretaker. Her next stop was the Hardest Michael's house. She parked in the driveway but didn't get out immediately. This house where she'd spent countless Sunday dinners, where she'd babysit the kids, where she'd gradually become invisible. The house where they'd planned a family vacation and forgot to include family. Emma opened the door before Karen could knock. "Grandma." She launched herself into Karen's arms with the enthusiasm of 17. "You look so different. Good different. Happy different." "Where are your parents?" "Living room. Fair warning. Mom's been stress cleaning for 3 days, and Dad's been practicing what he wants to say to you." Karen laughed. "Any idea what he's planning to say?" "Probably something about being worried and wanting to start over. He's been looking at your photos a lot. I think he's finally getting it." Michael and Jessica sat on opposite ends of their couch, like two people who'd been arguing and declared a temporary ceasefire. Michael stood when Karen entered, his face cycling through relief, embarrassment, and something that might have been respect. "Mom, you look good. I feel good. I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "Several apologies. Actually." Jessica shifted uncomfortably. "We were worried." "No," Michael cut her off. "We were controlling. There's a difference." He turned back to Karen. "I spent so much time being afraid of losing you that I never stopped to ask what you needed to keep living. I'm sorry." Karen studied her son, her baby, who was now a middle-aged man, dealing with his own fears about aging and loss. "I'm sorry, too. Michael, sorry I let you get so comfortable making decisions for me that you forgot I could make them myself." "Are you coming home?" "I am home, but I'm coming back to Portland. Yes, with some conditions." She'd prepared this speech during the drive north, practicing it until it felt natural instead of confrontational. "I love you all, but I won't go back to being treated like a fragile decoration in the corner of your lives. If you want to include me in family activities, I'd like to be consulted, not informed. If you want to worry about my health, talk to me, not my doctor. If you want to help me with something, ask first. Don't assume I need help." Jessica started to speak, but Michael held up a hand. "What else?" "I'm starting a photography business. Wedding portraits, family photos, maybe some commercial work, I'll probably travel sometimes not to escape, but because I want to see things, and I'm keeping the RV." Emma grinned. "You bought an RV?" "Half of one. Maggie and I are partners now. We're thinking about a road trip to see the fall colors in Vermont." "That sounds wonderful," Michael said. And to Karen's surprise, he seemed to mean it. They talked for 2 more hours, not the careful, superficial conversations of the past 3 years, but real discussion about expectations and boundaries and the complicated love between parents and adult children who are all just figuring it out as they go. When Karen finally drove to her own house, she felt lighter than she had in years. The house welcomed her back. But it felt different now, not like a refuge from the world, but like a home base for adventures yet to come. She unpacked her new clothes and hung her favorite photographs on the walls. Then she sat at Robert's desk and opened her laptop to start building a website for her photography business. At the top of the homepage, she wrote, "Karen Davis Photography, it's never too late to focus on what matters." Her phone buzzed with a text from Maggie. "Saw an article about a photography tour of Ireland for women over 60. Interested?" Karen looked around her house, her sanctuary that was no longer a prison, and smiled. "Send me the details." She typed back. The answer is probably yes. At 68, Karen Davis was finally living the life Robert had wanted for her, the life she'd wanted for herself, the life she'd earned through 4 decades of putting others first. She was done asking permission to take up space in the world. She was taking up all the space she needed, and it felt exactly like coming home,